Let's start with the basics. When we are looking at a number with exponents, we've got what we call our base number. And of course, we've got our exponent. So let's just do a quick review of what these things mean. I believe that this should be very simple for you. It's not 5 times 3, so that's the most important thing. What is 5 to the power of 3? Or remember, we could say 5 cubed as well. Jaden, what does that mean?
5 times 5.
Okay, good. It means the base number times itself as many times as the exponent. So since it's an exponent of 3. Now, anytime you just have a number like this, if you are asked to simplify, or let me see the directions. Yeah, we'll say simplify. That means get a number answer. If it's just numbers, give me a final number answer. Don't say 5 times 5 times 5. Say 125. Now, you can use your calculators, and I will show you real quickly on your calculator. Thank you. Let me show you on your calculator how to do to the power of, in case you haven't seen this before. Let's say I had 5 to the power of 8, and I didn't want to have to remember 5 times 5 times 5 and count how many 8s. Here's what you would do. 5, this button right here, where my finger is with this little pointing up arrow, let me scoot it up here. This one here, it's underneath the pi button, right? This little pointing up arrow means to the power of. So we would say 5 to the power of, and then we hit the number that is our exponent. So here on the screen, if you can see, it says 5 raised up to the power of 8, and then it does it all for you, and you don't have to count how many times you've typed it in. So when you have a big exponent, use that function on your calculator to help you. Okay, so that's pretty basic. Remember that we would say to the power of, or that there's a couple special ones. If I said to the power of 2, we could say that's a squared. If I said to the power of 3, that's cubed. So just be aware if you see those words, or if I use them, I think you're familiar with those. Now, how are we going to start to make it more algebra level exponents? Well, first of all, with variables. And secondly, by mixing them up. So if I said, for example, -2, let me raise it up a little, times p times q times 3 times p times p times q, remember that for exponents, we're showing some number multiplied by itself. So if we have a variable, if it's the same letter, the p or the q, that it's going to be that number multiplied by itself. We could do the commutative property and move these things around. But I think you guys can get it without even actually writing that down. What we would move is we put the numbers together. Let's do the numbers. -2 times 3, -6. We could use the commutative property and rewrite it and put all our variables that are the same all together. If p is times itself 3 times, how would I write that with an exponent, Jim? Yep, p to the power of 3 or p cubed. And then we look, okay, my q's, I can multiply those. Q times itself twice would be q to the power of 2. Now, the only thing you really have to pay attention to for this is that the number comes first. If you're pushing it all together, the number has to come at the front, and then the variables go in alphabetical order. And although you can't multiply in any order, so technically we could multiply these in a different order and get the right answer, your answers should start to look like this. This is the standard algebra format, and so I want you to get used to that alphabetical order for the letters. Okay, and if you don't know your alphabet, you got a whole bunch of other problems that I can't help you with at this point. All right, let's try a couple more. Let me show you something else to be very careful with, and that is if you see parentheses. For example, These two are different. This first one says the opposite of 3 to the power of 4. The opposite of 3 to the power of 4. So for this first one, we want to just do 3 to the power of 4. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27, times 3 is 81. The opposite of that, negative 81. Right? So really what we did here was we did the opposite of 3 times itself 4 times. This one is different. The parentheses say now we are doing negative 3 times itself 4 times. Negative times negative times negative times negative. The parentheses tell us it's this thing in parentheses that's being raised to the power of 4. This one is the opposite of whatever we get from 3 to the power of 4. So if I have 4 negatives, an even amount of negative numbers, what kind of answer will I get? Luke?
Negative.
Opposite. Positive. An even amount of negatives gives you a positive number. Because Luke, negative times negative, if we did these two, we'd get positive 9. If we did these two, we'd get positive 9. 9 times 9, 81. 4 of them negative. So notice we get 2 different answers from these 2 problems. Negative 81 is not the same as 81. So you got to be very careful with those parentheses. I'll show you a couple more with the parentheses. For example, 2y to the power of 3. The parentheses are saying this is everything inside the parentheses times itself 3 times. So this is 2y times 2y times 2y. And again, the 2 is being pushed by the y, so those are being multiplied. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Y times y times y, y cubed. Everything in the parentheses is the thing that's being multiplied by itself. That's different than this. In this bottom example, what's the thing that's being raised to the power of 3? Leanna?
Y.
Just the y. This, there's nothing to do to it. This is 2 times y cubed. You could separate it out with a dot, but there's nothing else we can do. The 2 is not raised to the power of 3. In this one, the parentheses, the whole thing is being multiplied by itself. Okay, so just try to go carefully if you see those parentheses, or if you don't. The lack of parentheses can also make a difference. Okay, last example. I think this is the last one I need to show you. We are going to also see some problems that ask you to evaluate. Evaluate means plug in and simplify. So I'll show you what I mean. Evaluate, and then you'll be given an expression like 2a plus b, and the whole thing cubed if a equals 3 and b equals 2. So we're going to plug the values for the variable into the expression, and we'll simplify using, of course, order of operations, or PEMDAS. So first, let's just substitute the values of the variable. Now 2a, we can't just say 23, it's 2 times 3. So let's write that down. 2 times 3 plus b is 2, and the whole thing cubed. Inside the parentheses, remember PEMDAS, we got to do the multiplication first. So I would get 6 plus 2 cubed. Now I can simplify the 6 plus 2, and I get 8 cubed. 8 times 8 times 8. Now I'm writing that down just as an example. You could just go straight to the answer. Just remember it's not 8 times 3. 8 times 8 is 64, times another 8, 216. Someone check on your calculator and see if my mental math is right. What's that?
Yeah, 512.
Oh, I was wrong. Thank you. 216 is a different, oh, that's 4 to the power of 4, maybe. 512, thank you. Bad math. I shouldn't trust myself. All right, so that's really all we're doing here. Again, the thing you need to be most careful of is with whether there's parentheses or not. Just go carefully, go slowly, and look for differences